Next up we have Laura Lovett. She's coming to us from UMass, where she's an associate professor of history, and she's here to talk to us about a project that has actually been on the books for quite a while, and the Five College DH has been helping bring sort of to the next iteration of sort of digital work. She's here to talk to us about the Valley Women's History Project. Thank you.
Hi, I'm one of the co-directors of the Valley Women's History Collaborative, and I'm being joined by Dan Jocelyn from Hampshire College and Amy Armstrong, also from UMass. And the reason I'm being joined by them is they're the ones who persuaded me we were already thinking digitally. And I really want to thank Marissa and Jeffrey and Kim for really helping us to understand how we were thinking digitally. We were thinking digitally because this project began 16 years ago. One of my colleagues, Joyce Berkman, another colleague at Smith, Susan Tracy, and a community member, Kay Marion Raymond, were already thinking about how do you collaborate? How do you collaborate with community groups? How do you think in terms of participation? What they discovered was, this is not what I thought I'd see. There it is. What they discovered was actually there were 450, it's great that we're following you, because there were 450 different groups in the Valley that were organized around progressive women's politics, lesbian politics. That's extraordinary since 1968. And that was just in a survey that they had done, I think, 5 years ago. We think we found more. And so one of the things we've been doing as a result of this was actually organizing oral histories and collecting this material and serving as a conduit for the Five College archives for different pieces of histories. This is the statement of the collaborative's project and an active sort of ongoing vision, but these are actually some lists of some of the things we had already been doing. So for example, I think the project began in collecting the history of UMass women's studies, and somebody realized there were all these amazing pieces and documents and papers that were about to disappear, and people who had stories and narratives that needed to be collected. When the Berkshire Conference came, we actually actively organized students and faculty and librarians from the 5 colleges to train them to collect oral histories. In the process of doing that, we discovered that the NGO structure for the UN was rooted in people who organized and ran YWCAs because they got tired of listening to sort of the men talk. They marched across the way and they restructured the way that we can even imagine the United Nations. Some of that happened because we had people here trained and ready to go, and long going under a project. And what happens is this collaborative works to identify projects, to collect histories, to link that with stories, but as well, we're also imagining how do you help different groups to collect their own histories, and what we can do, where we put that digital depository that allows us then to understand in much fuller picture what that means. So the Mary Vasquez Softball League, any of you know about the Mary Vasquez Softball League? One of the first explicitly lesbian softball leagues in the country, right? And if you think about what that meant, right? Was it feminist to throw a woman out or not? Did that? It changes the way pre-Title IX, it changes the way we can understand sports and what it meant to participate in sports. And we've wrapped up that piece, and as well as the women's productive health in the Valley. A book has come out of that, Creating Choice, that I think is in its 2nd edition, of oral histories of what it meant to provide information about sexual prevention before Roe v. Wade. And in fact, what most recently came out, and what I think Jan and Amy helped me to think about what we were doing digitally, was a long-standing series we're doing of histories of domestic violence shelters, called From Kitchen Table, because most of these were organized around somebody's kitchen table beginning in the 70s and the 80s. We don't think how recent domestic violence is so much in the news. Really, the shelters were not begun until 1977 or really the 1980s. And so it's a very new history and a new way of thinking about how these things were organized. And we actually set up interviews with some of the founders originally of NELQUIT, the New England Learning Center for Women in Transition in Greenfield, and under my guidance in Northampton with Safe Passage. We recorded their histories. We then had a student who edited those recordings, gave that tape to the agency itself to help them not only train incoming volunteers, but also to change the way that they thought about fundraising, for example. So we're very actively working with the organization to help them develop resources and then use them. And in fact, what happened was after we finished our project, they decided to keep going with it. And so one of the things the Valley Women's History Collaborative has always done is worked on training community groups. There are hundreds of people who I think have circled through this, And most recently, we've set up a structure where, for example, the Women's Economic Fund of Women's Fund of Western Mass wanted us to take on their project. We were in the middle of the domestic violence piece, so we did training to train them how to collect their own history. That information then gets sent, and I'm almost done, to our database here, our repository. And if you go into these, this is I never imagined I would do this, but in some ways we were trying to imagine how do you capture this stuff, make it available, to protect privacy. Some of these issues are very important, and we have a sort of structure that was funded by the Creative Economies grant at UMass, but we didn't know what to do with it and how to make it accessible to people at the same time. So if you're remotely interested in working with any of these 450 groups or helping us identify more, if you want to bring that into your class, if you want to do it as an independent study, we're hoping by the time we're finished with this to have the resources to allow you to not only do that, but to have your information hosted together with all of this other information simultaneously. I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues, and thank you.
You can go.
All right, you're wasting 2 seconds. Go.
2 seconds. Laura gave me one sentence, so I'll try for two. This project has been incredible, and working on trying to think of what it actually means to create digital repositories and to work in an online community at the same time with people's lives and with people's data and with people's security has been mind-boggling. And to be able to think of what does it mean to actually interview someone, to be sitting across from someone and to be collecting their life story for everybody to see, I'm so grateful for that opportunity.
Yeah, and I'm volunteering at Safe Passage right now, so it's really interesting to see how the work that we've done and understanding the history of it and seeing how it is now, and how that's incorporated into the training and stuff like that. So it was really a great project.
And it was really their idea to apply for this. So thank you.